Overwatch 2 has been imperfect from the start, and it only got moderately better in Season 15. However, for me, something else changed that made me love the game again. Let's talk about not only that thing, which I'll share at the end, but also some of the things that I enjoy about Season 15. And what better way to do that than to hop into the training range and mess around? Apparently that's what people do when they're Overwatch creators. I don't know that I fully understand it. Don't think I've seen any of them that do this play Cassidy, but you know what? I got a skin for him. Let's make it happen. So the first thing that I want to talk about is obviously it's perks, right? I mean, perks are probably one of the biggest things that we've seen in a long time for Overwatch. And I think it really does several things that are really important. But most important, I think, to all of us is just the fact that it made the game different, right? It actually finally gave us something new to look forward to when we log in. We haven't had something new to look forward to when we log in for a while. I don't even exactly know how long it has been, right? I mean, we've all been sitting around waiting for Overwatch and Blizzard to kind of realize that in order to keep their audience from going over to rivals, they would have to make some kind of a fundamental change to the game. And it couldn't just be some new hero or some new map. It needed to be something much, much bigger. We all knew this, right? And as they started saying, well, we've got some things coming, we've all heard that before. We're starting to feel a little abusive relationship. I've seen that comparison by a lot of people. But I also think that there's a cold, hard reality all of us need to face, is that the developers are human. So we've been patiently, and some of us impatiently, like myself, waiting for things to change. And then they bring out perks, and perks, I think, just adds the perfect level of dynamic to the game that wasn't there before and now is there because of that change. But the biggest thing that I think I enjoy the most about perks is the fact that you finally have an actual attempt at a counter swapping deterrent. I don't care what any of you guys say in the comments. I'm going to be honest with you about this particular next thing I'm going to say. Counter swapping is the least skilled way to play the video game. It just is. It's also objectively, whether you agree with that statement or not, because I would say it is subjective as to whether or not it's the least skilled way to play the game, but it is definitely objective, not the most fun way to play the game. You want to play your fun hero? Well, that sucks because they just counter swapped you and now you don't really have any way to get around it. Well, now with perks, you do. One of my main heroes, in case you guys don't know, is actually Zarya. And Zarya obviously struggles in several ways. She's not really a poke tank, and she's definitely a brawl exclusively and struggles to maintain any kind of high ground presence. So one of the things that I've always kind of figured out a way to do, and many people do already, is the right click jump. You know, I'm realizing it's kind of ironic that I haven't actually picked any of my perks as I've been messing around and talking about it, so we'll just pick them. Anyway, sorry, ADD moment there, but I really did realize that you can have a lot higher of an opportunity now with Zarya to take some high grounds that you couldn't take before with her right click jump. I'll be honest, that's actually one that I was less commonly taking. It was the perk that I pretty much ignored in support of the idea that I should have more damage from my ultimate. And then someone pointed out, just try it. It was in my chat. Several people actually pointed out, like, just try it, see what you think. I tried it and I realized that was one of her weaknesses, and now you can just jump over wherever you need to go. And it's quite something. That was kind of the big thing with perks, is that I just think that they were the thing that the game needed. And it was what I've always said, was what Flats said and what many other creators have said for a little while now, is that Blizzard needs to stop taking these like wimpy little attempts at throws and actually throw the ball. They need to swing for the fence, they need to, whatever metaphor you want to use. I don't know why it's always sports, but because none of us have probably touched a sports game in our life. But I would say that it's such an important thing that they finally swung for the fence, and it kind of cooked, I'm not gonna lie. Now, the next thing I'll mention really briefly that I liked from Season 15, this one I won't spend nearly as much time on because this wasn't something I actually initially liked, but I do now, is loot boxes. What I was worried about with them is that it was something more like Apex Legends. That's the game I came from before Overwatch, and I never played Overwatch 1, so loot boxes from Overwatch days was never something I was super familiar with. And what I could remember was the gambling-esque feeling with the Apex loot boxes. And then someone told me that the loot boxes in Overwatch are actually free. You know, it's not really going to be the same kind of a problem. I started opening some loot boxes, and many of you that watch my content know I'm not really a big advocate of the idea that skins actually make that big of a difference for me personally. And maybe they do for you, and if they do, nothing wrong with that. If you like skins, go for it. But it's not my thing. I eventually hope to be able to support the game more in buying them, but my pretty much sole purpose in buying them would be to support a game that has helped me do what I get to do now. And I really won't ever get to the point that I get that lost on me. You know, I do understand a free to play game does have to pay the bills somehow. They have to be able to pay their employees. I don't have a problem with skins. They just aren't my thing. They aren't really like the thing that I spend a lot of time obsessing on, and you won't see me make a skin tier list video kind of thing unless I lose a bet. If I ever make that video, know that I'm either being held hostage or I've lost a bet to chat. So let me talk briefly about why I actually left Overwatch. It was kind of, in essence, my expectations of the game. They were very high, and I don't think that they were bad. It was just that they were high, and I needed a game that actually seemed to have a future. I didn't want to be creating content in a game that seemed to be on its last limb. I don't think anybody should be doing that, right? If your job is on its way out, you probably leave your job as soon as you can when another competitor offers you more money. Now, it had nothing to do with money. That was a metaphorical sense. I didn't make anything more or less by going over to Rivals. It was a pretty much clean sweep across that, so I don't want you guys to misunderstand what I was saying there. But once I realized that I had these almost perfect expectations of a game that is ran by people who are not, shocker, perfect, and I know that just surprises all of us because it's like, oh wait, people are human? No way, that's real. And then I realized that and started making some changes to the way I looked at things. I lowered my expectations a bit from perfect to, yeah, this is good. It is a good video game. Overwatch 2, even when Rivals came out, it was still a good video game. It just wasn't as good in feeling, I think, for a lot of us as Rivals was. And I went to Rivals not because I was chasing clout or because I wanted something that I could maybe blow up in or any other reason except that I wasn't having fun in Overwatch anymore and I was having fun in Rivals. I also needed to lower the expectations I have of myself. One of the things that I'm in some ways aware of and in other ways unaware of is that I have a wife and 2 children. I'm very aware of that. But what I forget sometimes is that that requires me to live a very different lifestyle than a lot of people do. And the whole reason that I choose to pursue content is because in the grand scheme of things, I want to be a content creator. And I know that about myself. I'm playing the esports card until my time is up with that. And I know that a lot of you think my time never started. There's a lot of haters who really think I'll never make it. And that's okay. You can think that if that's what you want to think. I don't care anymore. I've kind of gotten past the point of caring about what the haters think. I'm just going to let that fuel me and move on. But I will tell you, I had to lower my expectations of myself. I had this expectation that I could do all of this by myself all the time. And I'm fortunate now to have people helping me do what I do in the content world, which allows me more time to still make an effort to get out of Diamond in this case. In the grand scheme of things, I intend to have a team of people that are helping me do this. And I'm realizing that I was doing too much. I wasn't available mentally for my family. I was physically around. I allowed for the time, but I wasn't as connected as I wanted to be. So I had to lower those expectations. And once I did, things became a little easier to do. The final thing I want to spend a little bit more time on before I really get to the point of sharing really the ultimate reason that I recognized I needed to come back to Overwatch, I want to talk about the fact that we as gamers are freaking spoiled rotten brats. When I was growing up, I'm not that old. I'm 28. I know to a lot of you that is old because I know my average audience kind of sits just below. Actually, oddly enough, the majority of you are older than me and calling me old according to the stats on YouTube. But anyway, the funny thing to me is that when I was growing up, gamers would sit in a line in person at a store to buy a video game on a night of release. It was a like crazy experience. It was not something that you could ever really relate to these days because these days you just order it online. You don't even have a physical copy of things anymore, which I don't have an issue with it, but that's just a thing. And it's crazy to me that people don't remember that. It wasn't that long ago. Again, I'm 28. When I was a teenager, that was within the last 2 decades, right? That is not long enough for us to be forgetting that we used to have to sit in the cold outside while the store was opening up and some poor person was about to be flooded with a bunch of sweaty, smelly teenagers with the new Pokemon game coming out. That was how excited we were when a new game came out. And you want to know what's crazy? We all went home after we got that game and not one of us complained. Now you have content creators who on day of release, they do a review of the game and they complain constantly. And complaining, the reason they do that is because that's what gets views these days. People have gotten so used to hearing people rant and complain and whine and, oh, this game could do this. And I'm just as bad as any of the other content creators out there. I really try not to be, but I know that about myself. And it's something that we really need to get away from as creators and as gamers. We need to quit being spoiled rotten brats about video games and enjoy them again. Remember what it's like to go do a midnight release in person and have all of the good times that we used to have after a game was released. It is such an important factor that I think we need to get back to, and we really need to quit being spoiled rotten brats. And now for the moment you have all been waiting for, what actually changed? Because the game didn't change that much. What changed that made me come back? Well, quite frankly, I changed. I realized, and put it out in a vertical video recently, that I have been a little bit of a whiner for quite a while, and by that I mean a lot. There's been a lot of people that I've perceived as haters that were actually just trying to give me some very constructive criticism to let me know that I was really just so focused on what I couldn't control, and I thought I was doing well, and generally I do. I think I do a lot better than 90% of the Overwatch creators out there about not whining about their teammates and stuff like that. But here's the thing, doing it once is still just as bad as doing it 80 times, because it still shows the prevalent mentality that's underneath. My mentality was wham wham my team, wham wham the matchmaking, and oh well, I don't say it out loud, so I'm better. I'm doing well. You know, it's not that I'm better than anybody, but I want to be clear what I mean by that. It's just that I'm doing better than that in this area than other content creators are. And that was something I was proud of. But not saying it out loud doesn't mean the mindset isn't there hidden. And that was what I realized as I really started being self-reflective while I was playing Marvel Rivals, because in Rivals I was very self-critical, and I've already flown to Diamond 2. Now let's just all be honest with ourselves. Rivals, even the devs admit, is not really meant to be a competitive game, so there's going to be a much easier climb, right, to that game. But the cold hard reality of all of this is that regardless of the fact that the game is easier, I just needed to quit being a little, well, you guys can read in between the lines there. I won't say the word because I don't want to get demonetized. It is such a big deal that you realize about yourself when you have a flaw. And my flaw was that I couldn't take constructive criticism. All constructive criticism I interpreted as toxicity. And that was sometimes true. Sometimes there are just toxic losers on the internet. Other times, even when they're being toxic, there are some people who mean very well. And when you realize that and you let it sink in, you kind of feel like you have a whole other level of people you got to serve. And that's kind of how I look at everything I do, is I try to look at it as I want to serve the Overwatch 2 audience content that they've never seen before. They won't see some brand new player to the game trying to go pro who started out just like everybody else in bronze and has now found himself within 300 hours of tank gameplay going into platinum, and realizing the thing that has kept me in platinum has actually not been anything to do with my gameplay. It has been my horrible mentality. And I've said it before, and many of you have made fun of me in my recent videos for it, and I don't really care. My mental is the thing that holds me back from this. And I know that it seems like I come up with a new weakness every other week, but it's because I'm finding new things. I'm discovering new problems, and that's a good thing. When you find out these things about yourself, it makes it easier to fix them. But until you actually carve out the time to be self-reflective and look within and realize, man, I gotta fix something here, it doesn't matter, because you're just going to continue to stay in the same place you've always been. Definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different result. That is the definition of insanity, and that's where I've been for the past almost 300 days. And do I know that I've wasted that time? Absolutely. But all that does is fuel me to want to be even better about it going forward. And to prove that I'm actually being very consistent in my thinking, you should check out this video right here, where I actually announced my stepping away from Overwatch 2 initially.